Broken Crown, Chapter 1. Ashes of the Old Life. The rain didn't stop, not even in death. I remember pavement, sirens, my chest crushed under a car that never braked. I remember the woman I pushed, her scream the moment I saved her, and then nothing. But this was worse than death. Kael awoke on cold stone. The air was musty, thick with rot and mildew. Rain dripped from the broken roof above, pooling beside shattered beams and scorched furniture. Rats scurried at the edge of his vision. His body ached, but not with wounds, with hunger, with exhaustion, with purpose. He didn't know the name of the place, not yet, but he knew this body was not his own. Lean, starved, shaking. A nobleman's tattered cloak clung to narrow shoulders. The taste of blood lingered on his tongue. There were voices outside, angry, demanding. "The tribute is due, Baron. Grain, silver, or souls, your people owe, and I don't care if they starve." Kael dragged himself to his feet. His head throbbed, his vision blurred, but he understood. This wasn't a conversation. It was a demand. The man outside wasn't asking. Thorncross. That was the name. It came to him like a whisper in a dream. A forgotten fiefdom in the corner of a rotting kingdom, led by a baron who had failed his people, until now. He stepped outside into the storm. A noble knight on horseback sneered at him, flanked by armored thugs. Behind them, villagers stood with hollow eyes, clutching children to their chests. Rain soaked their rags, but none dared speak. "You're late, Baron Kael," the knight said. "Or are you too proud to beg now?" Kael didn't speak. He stared at the man, calculating, measuring. No army, just enforcers. He's here for fear, not battle. He glanced at the villagers, all thin. One woman trembled barefoot in the mud, her baby silent in her arms. Not sleeping, just silent. Something cracked inside Kael then. Something old and kind. Something useless. He smiled, a slow, thin thing. "Take your grain," he said, "and tell your lord he'll get his silver next moon." The knight scoffed, but Kael didn't flinch. He watched them leave, watched their boot prints fill with water and blood. That night, Kael walked through Thorncross. Broken houses, cold fires, a graveyard too full. He found a boy digging a shallow hole with his bare hands, dirt caked under cracked fingernails. "She got sick," the boy whispered. "I tried to get her herbs, but they took our silver." The body beside him was small, wrapped in torn linen. Kael didn't ask the name. He knelt beside the boy, helped him dig. This kingdom feeds on the weak. Nobles dine while children bury their siblings in the mud. This is not justice. This is not order. If I am to live again, it will not be as their pawn. He returned to the ruined manor at dawn. Ilara stood waiting, blades hidden beneath her cloak, eyes unreadable. "You should have killed that knight," she said. "Next time, he'll return with more." Kael didn't look at her. He stared into the flames. "I needed him to return," he said, "and I needed him to speak to the others. Now, the seeds are planted." She crossed her arms. "Seeds of what?" "Paranoia, fear, doubt. I'll let the nobles sharpen their blades against each other while I make this place thrive." He turned, his face hardening. "No more graves dug by children. No more starving mothers. This fief will rise, and when the others come to bleed it again, I will show them what grows in ash." He walked to a battered table, placing a torn map across it. Marks were already drawn. Roads, noble houses, strongholds. "I remember a world," he whispered, "where steel was forged in fire, not tradition, where power came from knowledge, not blood." He looked up, eyes glowing faintly with the firelight. "I will break this kingdom, not with armies, not with dragons, with ideas, with truth wrapped in lies and poison laced with honey." Outside, the wind howled like something ancient and bitter, and far away, in castles built on the bones of the poor, the nobles slept, unaware that a new storm had risen from the mud and silence of Thorncross. Chapter 2. Smoke Among Serpents. The manor's war room was a joke. A broken table, one leg shorter than the others, creaked under the weight of a moth-eaten map and rusted candlesticks. Rats skittered beneath floorboards. The once regal crest of House Thorncross had peeled from the stone above the hearth, half-charred, barely recognizable. But Kael saw potential. The brokenness was camouflage, a mask for a monster in the making. Ilara sat near the hearth, sharpening her dagger with slow, deliberate strokes. Across from her stood Tomlin, the manor's steward, or what remained of him. Age and despair had hollowed him out. "You summoned the merchant lords of Ardenmere?" Kael asked. Tomlin nodded. "A letter sent by Falcon. They'll come, if only to gloat." "Good," Kael said. "Let them smell weakness. They'll bring snakes with silver tongues and sharpened smiles." Ilara looked up, brow arched. "And you plan to do what? Smile back." Kael's grin was bitter. "Of course, while I poison their wine and feed them lies." 3 days later, the caravan arrived. Velvet banners, gold-trimmed coaches, guards dressed more for parade than protection. The nobles of Ardenmere, fat with trade and smug superiority, descended on Thorncross like vultures drawn to a dying beast. Baron Callan, a wine-soaked gossip with a laugh like a goat's bleat. Lady Brevin, draped in jewels stolen from 3 dead husbands. And Lord Marin, whose silver tongue had ruined more houses than his sword ever could. Kael greeted them with open arms and forced humility. "Forgive the state of things. War, plague, misfortune. We do what we can." They feigned sympathy, exchanging glances thick with silent judgment. He offered them the finest of what little he had: aged mead, stew of root and bone, bread made from ground acorns. To their spoiled palates, it tasted like ash. But the wine, that was real, bartered from a secret cellar, enough to loosen tongues and lull pride. That night, the nobles laughed around Kael's crumbling hearth, unaware that every word they spoke was weighed, every smirk filed away like a blade in his ledger of revenge. "You know," Callan slurred, "this fief could be worth something. The forests alone, if someone knew how to harvest properly." "Indeed," Bravine added, swirling her goblet. "A new road, perhaps. We might fund it, in exchange for a title adjustment." "The young Baron," Marin said, leaning in, "would do well to remember where true power lies. Nobility is not inherited. It's earned, with coin." Kael smiled. "I'll consider your offers." "I'll bury you with them," he thought. When the vultures left, drunk on imagined conquest, Kael called Ilara to the tower. "I want their guards tracked, their trade routes mapped, their secrets uncovered." She smirked. "Already started?" He looked down at the village below, still broken, still starving. But now, something stirred. He had begun trading quietly with outland tinkers, offering them raw materials in exchange for blueprints, schematics from his old life. Windmill designs, irrigation systems, even rudimentary steam engines. He taught a carpenter to use a lathe, showed a blacksmith how to forge plowshares more efficiently. None of it flashy, all of it practical. The people whispered of change, of hope, of a baron who walked the fields with mud on his boots. They didn't know the half of it. Later that week, Kael stood before a row of villagers in the chapel ruins, men and women who had once served the previous baron, fearful and broken. "You've all seen what the world does to the weak," he told them. "You've seen what the nobles demand, what they take. That ends here." He tossed a sack of coin onto the altar, silver stolen from the very knights who extorted his people. "From now on, we build for ourselves, not for them." Eyes widened. not with disbelief, but with something he hadn't seen since awakening in this cursed place: faith. In the dark of night, Kael returned to the war room, alone. He stood over the map, tracing borders with a finger stained by ink and ash. "One house at a time," he whispered. "I'll set them all on fire." He didn't want their respect. He didn't want their alliance. He wanted their ruin, because the crown was broken, and he would be the one to shatter what remained. Chapter 3. The Serpent's Tongue. The sun had long since set, but Kael stood atop the ruined tower, staring out at the horizon. In the distance, smoke billowed from the heart of the kingdom, where the capital lay like a beast in its lair. It was a place Kael once thought untouchable, the seat of power, wealth, and corruption. Now, it was a target. Ilara stood behind him, silent, her fingers idly playing with the hilt of her sword. Her presence was always a quiet one, sharp like the edge of a blade. "You're planning something," she said, her voice low and even. Kael turned slowly, his eyes catching hers. "Of course. This isn't a game, Ilara. This is war." She raised an eyebrow, her gaze piercing through him. "You think they'll let you do it? These people you're playing with?" "They'll have no choice." 2 days later, a messenger arrived from Ardenmere bearing a sealed letter. It was addressed to Kael in a handwriting that reeked of feigned courtesy. "Baron Kael, it has come to our attention that your fief is underperforming, both in terms of tribute and governance. Should this continue, our esteemed House of Ardenmere shall be forced to take more direct action. We suggest you meet us at the capital to discuss this matter further. Sincerely, Baroness Astina of House Ardenmere." Kael held the letter with one hand, his other tracing the wax seal with cold precision. "So, they finally notice," he muttered. "Let them come. I'll give them a show they'll never forget." Ilara's voice was a whisper, full of dark amusement. "You do realize you've just made yourself a target, right? They won't stop until you're dead." Kael smiled. "If they think they can kill me, they'll have to try." A week passed in uneasy silence, but Kael had not been idle. He had dispatched his own spies, leveraging his network of trusted informants in the shadows, from the distant taverns to the merchant guilds in Ardenmere. He even managed to stir rumors among the nobles themselves, whispers of betrayal, deceit, and fractured alliances among the houses. Baroness Astina's message had given him the opening he needed. She wanted to play the game of power. He'd show her how to play. It was late in the evening when Kael and Ilara left the manor under the cover of darkness, their footsteps muffled by the thick fog rolling in from the distant hills. The road to Ardenmere was treacherous, but Kael had no intentions of going alone. They were not headed directly to the capital. No, that would be too easy. Kael's plan was more intricate. He needed leverage. He needed something that would ensure his position. And he had just the tool to do it: the hidden docks. The ship was small but swift, hidden in the cove that had been forgotten by most. Kael and Ilara boarded without a word, the only sound the creak of the wood beneath their feet. They were not alone. A handful of men and women stood nearby, their faces obscured by cloaks. One man, larger than the rest, stepped forward. "The cargo's ready, Baron." Kael nodded. "Make sure it's delivered to the right hands. We don't need to stir the pot just yet." The man chuckled darkly. "Understood. It'll be a pleasure." As the ship sailed toward the coast, Kael's thoughts lingered on his growing web of influence. He'd fed false rumors to the merchant lords, sowed dissent among the aristocrats, and planted a seed of suspicion in Baroness Astina's court. The time for subtlety was over. He had learned, in his former life, that power wasn't just about strength, it was about control. And he would control the chaos. 3 days later, Kael arrived at the gates of Ardenmere in the dead of night. The city was quiet, too quiet. The guards barely paid attention as they passed, their minds dulled by routine. Inside, Kael's first stop was the tavern where the most influential noble informants gathered. They sat at the back, enjoying their stolen pleasures. Kael, in his ragged clothes, slipped in unnoticed. His eyes scanned the room, searching for the target. Lord Garrick, the man who held the purse strings of the city's trade routes. He was easy to find. Lord Garrick sat in a dark corner, nursing a mug of wine. Kael took a seat across from him, his presence sharp and commanding, despite the ragged appearance he wore. The nobleman looked up, startled, and then smirked. "What's this? A beggar with a death wish?" "I'm Kael Thorncross," Kael said coolly, "and I'm offering you a deal." Garrick snorted, clearly unimpressed. "A deal? From a baron with no fief?" Kael leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "A deal that ensures you don't find your throat slit in the next week." Garrick's face twitched. "You think you can threaten me?" Kael's grin was cold. "Number, I think I can offer you something far more valuable than threats. Information, influence, the power to control the future of this city." As the conversation continued, Kael set the stage for his most dangerous gambit yet. The game of power was about to change, and he had no intentions of losing. But little did he know, the true threat was closer than he thought. Chapter 4. Ashes of Trust. The rain came down in curtains, cloaking the city of Ardennes in a cold, gray mist. Kael stood beneath a stone awning on the edge of the merchant quarter, watching the cobbled streets swell with runoff and secrets. The city was shifting. He could feel it. In the weeks since his clandestine meeting with Lord Garrick, the capital had grown uneasy. Merchants grumbled about sudden inspections. Nobles whispered of betrayal. And the guards? They stood a little stiffer at their posts, eyes darting with suspicion. Exactly as Kael intended. Still, it was moving faster than he anticipated. "Ilara," he said, turning to his shadowed companion, "do you feel it?" She nodded once. "The nobles are restless. You've lit a fire, Kael." He didn't smile. "Let's see who burns first." Kael returned to the manor house Venswick had lent him during his stay, a temporary gift meant to show hospitality. In truth, it was a gilded cage. Spies lingered among the servants, and every third bottle of wine had a faint scent of poison beneath the bouquet. He drank water. As he entered the study, a letter lay sealed on the desk. No signature, just a symbol. A black feather. Kael's brow furrowed. He opened it carefully, scanning the words. "You move like a snake, Baron Thorncross." Clever. But even snakes can be skinned. No threat, no demand, just a warning. Kael handed the letter to Ilara, who read it in silence before tearing it in two. "They're watching you," she said. "Someone's ahead of the game." Kael paced. "Or they think they are." Back in the village of Stone Hollow, far from the capital's poisoned courts, things were changing. Farms that once yielded barely enough to feed a family were now sprouting like never before. Kael had introduced irrigation techniques he'd remembered from his former life. Trenches, rain catchments, and simple hand pumps built by blacksmiths under his instruction. Children went to school again, not to memorize noble bloodlines or scripture, but to learn math, mechanics, and medicine. He'd made certain of that, hiring traveling scholars, scribes, and craftsmen. The people didn't yet know who he really was, but they were starting to believe in what he was becoming, and that belief was power. In Ardennes, Kael hosted a small feast for lesser nobles, a gesture of good faith. Nothing extravagant, plain wine, simple food, and humble decor. But the conversation? That was anything but. Lord Harron of Eastmere leaned in over the table, voice slurred with too much wine. "They say House Venswick plans to petition the king to consolidate titles, merge fiefs, clean out the small blood." Kael's face remained calm, but inside, fire sparked. That was it then. They weren't just watching. They were preparing to erase him. Eliminating weak barons, Kael said with a thin smile. It's always easier to kill rats when they're cornered. Lord Harren blinked, sobering slightly. You calling yourself a rat? Kael laughed softly. Oh, no. I'm the trap. That night, he sent Ilara on a quiet mission. 2 targets, a record keeper in the royal census hall and a noble scribe known to adjust histories for coin. No killing? Not yet. Just conversations and coin. He needed proof of what House Venswick was planning. If they were building a case to dissolve his barony, he'd dissolve them first. Quietly, legally, permanently. The next morning, as he reviewed the maps and ledgers he'd borrowed, Kael spotted a pattern. Every fief near the borderlands, the poorer territories, the ones that didn't produce gold or gems, were being scrutinized. Their barons discredited, accused of mismanagement or treason. It was a purge. Silent, bloodless, political. And Kael was next. He summoned Garrick again. This time the merchant lord came quickly, and with a twitch in his eye that Kael didn't like. I've done what you asked, Garrick snapped. The rumors have spread, the nobles are at each other's throats, but now I have a target on my back. Kael leaned forward, voice soft. You're a traitor, Lord Garrick. You know risk and reward. Garrick grit his teeth. What exactly are you planning? Kael stared at him, dead-eyed. A storm. He slid a scroll across the table, a list of minor lords, those who had grievances with House Venswick, land disputes, trade limitations, petty insults never forgotten. I need you to bring them together, quietly. They'll think they're forming a block of resistance. But in truth, they'll be marching under my banner. Garrick swallowed. And if I say no? Kael smiled. You won't. Outside the manor, the rain had stopped. The clouds had not. Kael stood in the courtyard, watching the sky churn above him. He had set the pieces, moved the pawns. But the black feather still haunted his thoughts. There was someone else out there. Someone who saw what he was doing. And if Kael didn't find them first, he might not live to finish what he'd started. Chapter 5. The Gathering Storm. The manor was colder than usual. Kael sat in silence within his war room, formerly a wine cellar, surrounded by candlelight and silence. On the long oak table before him sat pieces of parchment, wax-sealed letters, and a map marked with symbols only he understood. His plan to destabilize the nobility was taking root, but something about the pace unsettled him. They're reacting too fast, Kael muttered. Almost like they expected this. Ilara stepped from the shadows. Because someone's whispering in their ear. He looked up at her. Find them. Back in Stone Hollow, Kael's efforts bore visible fruit. The town square had a new forge, modern, efficient. Farmers sold surplus grain, and Kael's early attempts at building a sanitation system had led to cleaner streets and fewer sick children. The people didn't cheer him in the streets, they didn't bow, but they worked harder, smiled more, lingered in conversation. Prosperity bred trust. Kael didn't need worship, he needed loyalty, and he had it. One of his engineers, a young man named Halric, brought him news. A group of tinkerers from the north had arrived, bringing with them rumors of hydraulic mills and wind-powered workshops. Kael invited them for a feast, not as nobles, but as builders. Another step toward his silent revolution. In Ardenmere, Garrick delivered. 3 minor nobles had agreed to Kael's coalition: Lord Bren of Hollowhearth, Lady Imari of Duskvale, and the paranoid Lord Tolvan, who trusted no one and carried poison in both sleeves. Kael met them in a ruined chapel on the edge of the city under cover of night. I want to reclaim our voice, Kael said, voice calm but cold. We are being bled by those who no longer serve the realm, only themselves. It's time to return balance. Bren scoffed. You speak like a philosopher, not a baron. Perhaps, Kael replied, but I act like a king. The others fell quiet. In the end, they agreed, Not because of belief, but because of fear. Fear of Venswick, fear of irrelevance, Kael's favorite tools. But every step forward seemed to bring a new shadow. That evening, Alara returned with news. "There's a woman," she said, "goes by the name Celine. No house, no lands, but every noble court she visits seems to act differently afterward." Kael frowned. "An informant?" "A manipulator," Alara said. "She doesn't serve anyone, but she knows things, dangerous things." Kael stared into the fire. "Then she's exactly the kind of threat I can't allow to move freely." The next morning, Kael returned to the capital's archive hall, an ancient library sealed to commoners, but open to nobles with the right sigil. He passed the guards easily, flashing the Venswick-appointed ring he wore with contempt. He wasn't there for books, he was there for truths. Deep in the hall's lower levels, he found censored ledgers, records of nobles who'd vanished without trial, properties reassigned without vote, bloodlines rewritten on parchment. Venswick had been doing this for decades. The crown, Kael realized, had been blind or complicit. He smiled. This was the leverage he needed. Back in his manor, Kael laid out the ledgers like weapons. "These pages," he said to Alara, "are sharper than swords. They tell the truth. And if I release them to the right people, the nobles will cannibalize each other." Alara nodded slowly. "Then the storm begins." "No," Kael said. "The storm ends, and my reign begins." But just as the pieces seemed to align, the unexpected happened. Kael awoke to find a scroll nailed to the manor's gate. Red wax, black ink, one line. "Even kings fall, especially false ones." Alara stepped beside him, eyes scanning the rooftops. "Celine," she said. Kael folded the scroll carefully. "Then it's time I meet her." Chapter 6. A Mirror of Ash. The marketplace in Ardenmere was alive with noise. Children ran laughing through the stone paths, merchants barked over their goods, and for the first time in decades, a festival shimmered in the city air. Kael watched from a rooftop, cloaked in a dark gray mantle that fluttered in the wind. She had chosen this place to meet. He suspected a trap, of course, but curiosity outweighed caution. "Third stall, black silk," Alara had whispered earlier. "She'll be waiting." He spotted the stall easily. Unassuming, no signage. Just a woman seated on a worn wooden stool, twirling a dagger between her fingers with a lazy elegance. She looked no older than 30, dressed in dark reds and grays, with hair like a raven's wing and eyes like polished onyx. Celine. Kael descended from the rooftop like a ghost and approached, hands visible, eyes locked on hers. "Baron Venswick," she said, smiling faintly. "Or should I say, Kael of the Ashline?" His blood ran cold. That name was buried, forgotten, his old life. "How do you know that name?" he asked. Celine's smile never wavered. "I know many names. I make it my business to know the ones people bury deepest." Kael folded his arms. "Then you know what I'm doing." "I do. And more importantly, I know why you're doing it. Do you approve?" "I don't waste time on approval. I trade in outcomes." She stood and leaned closer, her voice low. "You want to burn the nobility to the ground? I want to see what rises from the ashes. Maybe we help each other." Kael searched her eyes. There was no fear, no hesitation, just hunger for something beyond power, knowledge, legacy, chaos. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Yet," Celine said, turning away. "But I'll be watching. And when the day comes that the fire you start threatens to consume you, I'll decide if you're worth saving." Then she was gone, vanishing into the crowd like smoke in the wind. Back in Stone Hollow, Kael found his forge team waiting. "We finished the steam rig," Halric said proudly, leading him to the outskirts. There it was, massive, loud, gleaming, Primitive by modern standards, but decades ahead of anything in this world. "It works?" Kael asked. Halric grinned. "Already doubled the Smith's output. Word's spreading fast." "Good. Let it spread. Let the nobles grow suspicious. Let them come. He needed them to." But that night the trap was sprung. A letter arrived bearing the seal of Lord Chancellor Merrin himself, an invitation to the royal summit, an unprecedented meeting of the remaining high nobles. Mandatory. "Could be a show of force," Ilara warned. "Could be a chance to gut you in public." Kael held the letter over the candle until the wax caught fire. "Either way, I attend." The capital gleamed in gold, but Kael only saw rot beneath the polish. Within the grand hall, lords and ladies lounged like vipers pretending to be birds. Kael's boots echoed too loud on marble. His common-born roots clung to him like a shadow they all pretended not to see. Then Lord Merrin stood, tall, gray, serpentine. "We gather not to squabble," he said, "but because one among us has made waves. Unnatural waves, the Baron of Ashmore." Kael raised an eyebrow, so that was the name they'd given him now. "You elevate peasants, build war machines, speak against our order. Tell me, Baron, are you still loyal to the crown?" Silence. Every eye on him. Kael stepped forward. "I am loyal to the realm," he said, "but not to parasites." Gasps. A few scattered smirks. Lady Imari, seated far left, stifled a chuckle. Lord Tolvan's fingers danced near his hidden blades, and Merrin's smile thinned like a blade. "So be it," the Chancellor said. "Let the games begin." As Kael departed the hall, a whisper met his ear. "Nice speech," Selene purred from a pillar's shadow. "But you just declared war. Are you ready to bleed for it?" Kael didn't turn to face her. "I already have." Chapter 7. The Price of Fire. The storm broke over Stone Hollow just past dusk. Rain pelted the rooftops in waves, thunder cracked like gods in argument, and Kael stood beneath it all, staring at the burning carriage at the edge of his estate. The flames hissed against the rain, but they would not die. Not yet. It was a message, not from the crown, not from the nobles. This was personal. Inside the wreck, 3 bodies smoldered, 2 guards and Halric, the young engineer who gave Kael so much promise for the future. His fingers still clutched a schematic, now half-charred. Ilara found him there, drenched and silent. "This wasn't noble work," she said quietly. "No crest, no sigils." Kael didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was cold steel. "Find the one who did this. Burn everything they've ever touched." The following morning, Kael stood before the people of Stone Hollow, not in silks or armor, but in the scorched coat he'd worn to drag Halric's body from the fire. "I will not give you pretty words," he said. "I won't tell you the danger is over. It's only begun." The villagers listened, every face a mix of grief, fear, and a strange new thing: fury. Halric was one of us. He dreamed bigger than most dared to, and that's what they feared. Not the machines, not the progress, the hope. He paused. "They think if they kill enough of us, we'll bow again. They've forgotten what we are." He raised Halric's half-burned schematic. "We're not broken. We're becoming something new." And for the first time, his people raised their fists in unison, not out of fear, but rage. In Ardenmere, word of Kael's speech spread like wildfire. Lady Imari sent gold and mercenaries in secret. Lord Bren began stockpiling grain and arms. Lord Tolvan vanished. And in the capital, Chancellor Merrin watched it all unfold from his high tower, smiling like a man watching a feast be prepared. "Let him rise," he said to his advisor. "The higher he climbs, the harder he'll fall." But Selene, standing near the window, shook her head. "Number, you don't understand. He's not climbing. He's digging." Merrin frowned. Digging, Celine's eyes gleamed. A grave, one big enough for all of us. Kael's war council met in the manor's underground chamber that night. Ilara, Garrick, a new strategist named Calder, and a blacksmith's widow named Marin, who'd rallied over 100 miners to his cause. 3 noble houses are leaning our way, Calder said. They won't declare openly, but they'll support us from the shadows. Cowards, Ilara muttered. Useful cowards, Kael corrected. For now. Marin unrolled a parchment. The forge can be expanded. We've got the raw ore, and your wind rig works. We just need more workers. You'll have them, Kael said. Anyone who joins the forge earns coin and land. No more begging from nobles for scraps. And the other towns? Garrick asked. We liberate them, Kael said. One by one. Quietly. The plan was in motion, but Kael's eyes lingered on Halrick's empty chair. 3 nights later, they struck. A border town called Greaves Hollow, known for its taxes and cruel lord. Under Kael's banner, 60 armed workers marched in silence beneath the trees. Ilara moved like a phantom through the gates. Garrick took out the watchtower with precise arrows. No mercy. No grand speech. When dawn came, Greaves Hollow belonged to the rebellion. Kael stood atop the walls as the sun rose and saw villagers staring from windows, unsure whether to cheer or cry. We are not conquerors, he shouted. We are reminders that no one was born to kneel. And slowly, one by one, the people stepped forward. Food was distributed, nobles were disarmed. The old tax ledgers were burned in the square. Kael watched the flames and felt something. Not pride, not victory, just the growing weight of what he'd set into motion. That night, he returned to his chamber to find Selene seated by the window, sipping his wine. I didn't invite you, he said. You did, she replied. You just didn't know it. He didn't argue. She rose, walking slowly, eyes sharp. You've won your first blood. Congratulations. But here's the question. She leaned in close. How many more are you willing to kill to finish what you started? Kael's voice was low. As many as it takes. Celine's smile was genuine this time. Not cruel, not mocking, just sad. Then you really are the villain they feared. Kael didn't flinch. Good. Chapter 8. When Ashes Speak. Greaves Hollow was silent at dawn. The banners of House Orion were gone, pulled down by commoners and burned. In their place, Kael's new crest flew, a silver crown cracked down the middle, flanked by twin hammers crossed in defiance. Not noble, not royal. Something new, something broken. Kael stood in the town square, watching the blacksmith's boy teach soldiers how to reload a crude repeating crossbow, a design stolen from the ruined archives of his past life. It was slow, clunky, prone to jamming, but it worked. They were building, but not fast enough, not for what was coming. In the tower once owned by Lord Garin of Greaves Hollow, Ilara stepped over the bodies of the last guards, now stiff and cold. Execution squad is waiting, she said. 6 remaining nobles from the manor. Some say they surrendered. Some say they begged. Kael didn't answer immediately. He was staring out the window where children played in the street with wooden swords and makeshift shields, too young to know their town had changed hands in blood. Tell them to kneel, Kael finally said. Not to me, to the people. Let the townsfolk choose. Ilara blinked. You're serious? I'm tired of nobles deciding what's just. Let the ones they taxed and starved decide. And if the people demand their heads? Kael's voice didn't waver. Then the ground drinks noble blood. Word spread fast. Greaves Hollow's people gathered by noon. The nobles were marched into the square, wrists bound, eyes wide. Some wore silks, others nightclothes. One wept openly. They were made to kneel. Kael didn't speak. He only watched as the townspeople, once powerless, stepped forward. One by one, they shouted crimes, taxes taken from the mouths of babes, a girl dragged to the keep for refusing a lord's hand, a man whipped for fishing in his own stream, then silence. And then the call, "Let justice be done." The axe fell 6 times. Kael didn't flinch, not this time. But later, alone in the Lord's chambers, he found his hands trembling. Meanwhile, in the heart of the kingdom, nobles gathered in secret chambers. House Varen demanded immediate retaliation. House Telmar proposed assassination. House Dre simply vanished, their estate burned from the inside without a trace of the family within. The king remained silent, but Chancellor Marin was already moving. He sent riders north, not for armies, for wolves, mercenaries, exiled knights, bounty killers, men who didn't ask why, only how much. Back in Stone Hollow, Calder approached Kael with worry. "We have a problem," he said. "Your wind engine, the large one, we've lost contact with the crew building it." "Sabotage?" Kael asked. "Maybe, or fear. It's a new world out there, and not everyone's willing to follow you into it." Kael rubbed his temple. "Then we build without them." "There's more," Calder said. "Your name is spreading faster than we can manage. You're being called the Crown Breaker, the Black Flame, the Usurper." Kael almost smiled. "Good. Let them fear the mask. It keeps their eyes off the man." That night, Kael visited the forge. Marin was inside, sleeves rolled up, arms blackened with soot, hammering out pieces of a strange, multi-pronged spear. She looked up only briefly. "Didn't expect you here." "I need to remember what we're building," Kael said. "Still think it'll matter in the end?" Marin asked, wiping sweat from her brow. "That the machines and books and steel will outlast the fire?" Kael looked at the molten metal, glowing like the heart of a new sun. "They'll try to bury us," he said, "but they don't understand. Ash feeds roots." Far from the warmth of the forge, Ilara walked the woods with Selene. "You're still here," Ilara said. "Thought spies vanished after the first taste of blood." "I'm not spying anymore," Selene replied. "I'm watching." "Same thing. Number spies care who wins. I only care what comes next." They stopped at a cliff's edge. Below, Kael's forces trained by torchlight. Selene watched with eyes like night glass. "You don't see it yet, do you? He's not building a rebellion. He's building a new kingdom. And the worst part is, he might win." Ilara's hand moved to her blade. "If you think he's dangerous—" "Oh, he is," Selene said, backing away. "That's why I'm staying." By the week's end, 2 more towns had quietly pledged to Kael's cause. One sent food, the other sent steel. Kael's army wasn't large, but it was growing. Garrick rode in from the west with maps, new recruits, and a bloodied noble seal. "They're hunting us now," he said, "and they've hired men who don't care about honor or law." Kael nodded. "Good. I've been waiting to stop hiding." He looked down at the campaign map. The capital was circled, but Kael's finger tapped a different spot. "Before the throne," he said, "we take their soul." "Where's that?" Garrick asked. Kael stared at the parchment, eyes full of fire. "The academy, the old vaults, the place where knowledge sleeps, where they locked away the tools of better men." And with that, the next move was set. Not just war, revolution. Chapter 9. The Vault of Silence. The academy sat like a fossilized god, its spires jutting through the mountain mist. Once a sanctuary of science, art, and arcane brilliance, now a tomb. The nobles had stripped its scholars, burned its books, and sealed its greatest halls. Anything that threatened their grip on the world was buried behind stone and silence. Kael stood before its rusted gates. "Looks more like a prison than a school," Garrick muttered. "It is," Kael replied, "for truth." Behind him, a small force of engineers, scouts, and elites waited, hand-picked, No banners, no drums. This was not a battle, it was a theft. They had come to steal the future. The entry was protected by old magic, sigils forgotten even by those who once ruled. Kael studied the cracked runes, tracing them with fingers that remembered touch-screen schematics and holographic code. "Marin," he called, "charge the prism." Marin stepped forward with a crude device strapped to her back. Copper coils hummed to life, arcing lightning from the heart of the battery. She touched the probe to the gate's core rune. It screamed. A flare of blinding white surged through the stone, and then silence. The gates groaned open, coughing dust and whispers. They stepped into history. Inside, the halls were lined with broken statues and shattered memory. Murals of invention defaced with noble slogans. Shelves empty, air thick with mold and betrayal. And then they heard it. Footsteps. Dozens. Kael raised a fist. From the shadows, figures emerged. Thin, pale, wrapped in the gray cloaks of the silent order. The last wardens of the vault, not loyal to king or crown, but to the knowledge buried here. Their leader stepped forward, a woman with silver eyes and ink-stained hands. "You seek the vault," she said. "Why?" Kael met her gaze. "To wake what your masters tried to kill." "The vault is cursed." "No," Kael said. "It's feared." The standoff pulsed like a blade on a throat. Then, without warning, the woman turned and walked deeper into the dark. "Follow, or die ignorant." Kael nodded, and his team moved behind her, weapons sheathed. As they walked, she spoke. "We kept what we could hidden. Books, blueprints, designs that could unmake empires. The nobles wanted fire and blade. We held on to electricity, flight, memory." They passed a chamber where a full-sized mechanical beast lay in pieces, its wings torn, its eyes dim. Kael paused. "What is that?" "A dragon," she said. "One we built." Finally, they reached the vault, a towering door of obsidian and brass, sealed with 7 locks, each powered by a separate discipline: mathematics, language, energy, logic, art, memory, and blood. The silent woman turned to Kael. "Only a mind that has walked both past and future can open this door. Do you understand what you're about to unleash?" Kael stepped forward. "I understand more than anyone alive." He placed his hand on the first lock. The process took hours. Each lock tested a different piece of Kael's fragmented soul, his old life clashing with his new purpose. A poem written in quantum code, a machine powered by contradiction, a puzzle that erased itself as it was solved. By the end, Kael was shaking, but the vault opened. Inside, rows of artifacts glowed faintly, cores of preserved energy, crystals that responded to sound, scrolls bound in glass. And in the center, a chair. Not a throne, but something older. Something hooked into mind and body both. A device for transfer, for preservation. Kael approached it, heart pounding. "What is this?" "A key," the woman said. "To memory, to legacy, to power." Kael sat. The machine came to life. Visions flooded him, lives not his own, voices speaking in overlapping tones. The architects, the dreamers who tried to elevate the world centuries ago. They had failed, betrayed, silenced, but they had encoded their knowledge into a living memory system, waiting for one with the will to finish what they started. Kael screamed as it filled him. Every plan, every weapon, every map of the kingdom, above and below. When it ended, he collapsed and rose different. Eyes sharp with understanding, shoulders heavy with ghosts. Back at the surface, Celine waited with Alara. "He's been in there too long," Alara said. "If he survives," Celine replied, "he'll never be the same." The door opened. Kael stepped into the light. "I have the blueprints," he said, "for the machines, for the cities, for the fall of the crown." Garrick stepped forward. "What now?" Kael's answer was simple. We go south. We light the forges. We build the war machines. He paused. And we erase the noble line from history. The silent woman bowed. We'll follow. And so, the vault was emptied, and the end began. Chapter 10. The Machines Wake the Forge sang again. Once a graveyard of rust and forgotten sparks, the southern foundry roared with new life. Smoke curled into the dawn sky, and hammers rang like war drums. It had taken weeks to transport the designs from the vault, longer still to teach the engineers to understand them. But Kael had not come for slow victories. He came for fire. Again! Kael shouted, pacing the gantry above the workers. Below, molten steel poured into a frame, one that didn't resemble any wagon or cart. It stood on 4 legs. Pistons hissed, gears locked into place. A war golem. Crude by his old world standards, revolutionary by this one's. Garrick wiped sweat from his brow, staring in awe. We could crush entire keeps with this thing. Kael nodded. We will. In a nearby chamber, Ilara and Celine were testing another machine, a prototype drone, small, silent, fast. It flew in circles before perching gently on Kael's shoulder. A spy that doesn't bleed, Ilara said, impressed. Can it speak? Kael tapped its side. The drone projected a shimmering map with glowing icons marking key noble strongholds. It listens, records, transmits. It doesn't just watch, it remembers. Celine leaned in. You're building more than weapons. I'm building doubt, Kael said. When the nobles realize they're being watched, when rumors spread that I see all, they'll begin to fracture. He pointed at the map. And we help them fall apart. The first move came days later. A letter, forged in perfect imitation, was delivered to Lord Venric, an aging hawk of a noble with a history of cruelty. The contents detailed a supposed conspiracy among 3 other lords to usurp him during the Harvest Summit. Paranoia bloomed like a weed. Within a week, Venric's forces raided a border estate. Within 2, the retaliations began. Kael watched it unfold with cold precision. They think they're acting out of self-defense, but they're playing my game. The nobles began summoning their personal armies, afraid of betrayal. Trade slowed. Food hoarding increased. Villagers fled noble lands for the fief of Baron Kael, a man whose people claimed were fed, clothed, protected. The irony, it was true. While the kingdom frayed, Kael's own territory thrived. Water pumps replaced buckets. Solar glass panels harvested light into energy cells. Windmills powered looms. Automated mills ran day and night. The peasants didn't question it. They only thanked their strange, tireless baron. They called him the Maker in Black. Some whispered that he'd made a deal with gods. Others said he was one. He encouraged all of it. Myth moves faster than armies, he told Marin. Let them fear the idea of me before they ever see my face. She nodded. You've become the villain of their bedtime stories? Kael smiled. Exactly where I want to be. At night, he sat in silence, reviewing intelligence. The drones fed him every whisper, every coded message between trembling noble houses. One letter caught his eye. From a duchess he had not targeted, a woman named Lysaria. She had not hoarded food. She had opened her gates to fleeing citizens. She had punished her own for abuses of power. She's different, Celine said, frowning. No, Kael said. She's a threat. Garrick scoffed. She's helping people. That makes her dangerous, Kael said. If someone like her becomes the face of reform, they'll rally to her instead of me. He stood. Send her a message. Offer alliance. Celine raised an eyebrow. And if she refuses? Kael's eyes were ice. Then she burns with the rest. Meanwhile, deep beneath the old capital, something stirred. In tunnels sealed centuries ago where forbidden magic had been buried and chained, a small team of Kael's excavators broke through a vault wall. Inside, they found movement, not machines, not men, but something older, and it was awake. Chapter 11. What should stay buried? The vault door had no key, only an old riddle etched in a dead language, circling its iron frame like a curse. It had taken 3 days, a near cave-in, and one very broken shoulder from Garrick before the barrier yielded to Kael's insistence. Behind it, silence waited. No wind, no light, no time. Just stone walls pulsing faintly with violet veins, like the heart of some ancient beast, long dormant but never truly dead. Kael stepped forward. "I was told magic died," he said softly. Marin's torch flickered. It didn't. It just learned to hide. They entered. The chamber stretched in unnatural directions, its dimensions warping the eye. The further in they moved, the less the world made sense. Straight lines bent. Heat radiated from cold marble. Gravity twitched like a flickering candle. And then they saw it, a throne, not of gold or bone, but of crystal and void. Floating above it, suspended by invisible force, was a crown, jet black, jagged like lightning, humming with restrained hunger. Garrick muttered, "That's not a relic. That's a warning." Kael disagreed. "That's a gift." A vision struck him the moment he touched it. Not a memory, a future. The kingdom in flames. Towers toppled, nobles screaming as their sigils burned. His banner, black and silver, rising above the chaos. And at the center of it all, Kael, not just feared, worshipped. He snapped back, gasping. Celine steadied him. "What did you see?" Kael didn't answer. He turned to the others. "Seal the vault. Post sentries. No one enters without me." "And the crown?" Marin asked. Kael looked down at the artifact in his hands and smiled. "It's mine now." Above ground, the rumors began almost immediately. Villagers near the excavation site spoke of unnatural storms and whispers in the wind. Animals fled the woods. The river turned black for a single night, then cleared. The church sent a priest to investigate. He didn't return. When asked, Kael simply said, he found what he was looking for. Meanwhile, Duchess Lysaria responded to his proposal. A polite refusal, no insult, no threat. Simply a declaration that she would not serve under a man who ruled by fear. Kael admired her honesty. Then he targeted her water supply. Within days, crops wilted across 3 villages. Fish died in their ponds. No army marched, only sabotage, subtle and cruel. Yet Lysaria didn't bend. Instead, she rallied. With her own engineers, her own doctors, her own will. She began building alliances with smaller baronies, ones Kael hadn't yet reached. "She's smarter than I thought," Kael admitted. Celine frowned. "She could become a symbol." "She already is." Kael stared into the firelight, the crown now hidden behind his study wall. But symbols break too. Back in the shadows, Ilara brought him news. One of the noble families, the Bravins, had begun to investigate Kael's machines. They had captured a drone, disassembled it, studied the markings. "They'll trace it back to us," she warned. Kael shook his head. "Not if they're dead." He issued a false flag order, disguised as retaliation from a rival noble, and sent word to the Breven family's sworn enemies. The resulting siege took 3 days. Not a Breven soul remained. In the aftermath, nobles grew quieter. They stopped sending messengers. They stopped traveling. They stopped trusting anyone. Kael's plan worked. Mistrust spread like infection. But so did whispers about him. Some said he was cursed. Others claimed he wore a demon's armor. A few insisted he had died and come back wrong. Kael let every rumor live. He fed them. The people followed his progress like a prophecy. They left gifts at the edge of his land. Coins, tools, candles, carved effigies of his likeness, and still he wanted more. That night, Kael returned to the vault alone. The crown waited. He didn't wear it, not yet, but he felt it breathing, not with lungs, with will. A low voice crept into his thoughts, not words, just emotions, urges, promises. Celine once said, "Power speaks." This crown screamed. Kael listened and smiled.